Is Rocket League a tier 1 esport? I think that's actually one of the most interesting questions that we've been poised about this game recently. It's an interesting question because it's actually not a new one at all. I think this all started actually with the esport tier discussion. I believe it started actually in 2019. I did some digging and it was this article. I'm pretty sure. Now, esports is not my specialty, but I'm you guys know I'm a hardcore Rocket League esports fan, so that's sort of it's been my gateway drug into esports. In 2019, Esports Observer released this tier list of the top PC games. They were talking about esports, but they just said how relevant the game was. And it was a little bit absurd because we had Rocket League as a tier 3 with Grand Theft Auto, Warcraft, FIFA, and the legendary esport video game Minecraft. So this list really just didn't make any sense because if we're just talking about the impact of the game, obviously Minecraft has way more impact than Rocket League. But if we're talking about esports, is Minecraft esports a thing? Do we have like C9 Minecrafters and like Minecraft tournaments? Maybe so, but I'm not aware of them. And then we have like in tier 2, like PUBG esports does that even exist anymore? I mean, the Rainbow Six Siege people love this. They're like, we're better than Rocket League because that was our competitive comparison in esports. So this came up, it was a huge uproar in the Rocket League community. We're not tier 3, we're at least tier 2. Like, come on. Now then the next year in 2020, they did the same thing and we got up to tier 2. Oh, thank God we're in tier 2 with Fortnite. And that's kind of where we stayed. They did another one in 2021. I don't know if these are the 3 I could find. This is obviously just an image, but the conversation stuck around with the tiers. So even back in 2019, there was pushback. This is from Slasher, the esports reporter, who is inactive now, apparently, but back then he was the guy. And he was saying Rocket League deserves to be a tier 1 esport. He's always been a proponent of Rocket League esports, recognizing how awesome it is. Now, the reason this topic has come up again is because of the recent World Championship, which saw record viewership, record hype, really just next level production level. I think was another thing that got people thinking. Like production level was just had reached another height. Like just the cinematics, the presentation, the scripting, the way the casters and analysts are so much more comfortable now than they used to, just from doing so many events. Now the conversation has come up again. Is Rocket League now a tier 1 esport? I think this conversation probably got started from Jake Lucky, who said Rocket League is a tier 1 esport. There's no question about it. And he has here examples of some of the viewership we were seeing over Worlds, for especially peaking during the Carmine Corp versus Vitality match. 176,000 live viewers. Kometo was watching, of course. He hit well over 100K. This is happening at the same time, so that's 200 plus combined. Rocket Baguette, which is the French Rocket League community, which just shows how far ahead the French community is. The fact that they have their own like streaming community that also was pulling 60K views. And Rasmus Thor, I don't know how to say his name. This guy had a lot of views. The point is, yeah, a lot of people were watching Worlds. It's hard to argue that, okay, well, if we're talking about tiers, how is that not tier 1? But on the other hand, if you compare it with some of the other mega tier 1 esports, it still is not quite there. So here's a great comparison from Cheetah on Twitter. And if you look at some of these numbers, this might bring you down to earth a little bit if you're a Rocket League fan. CSGO, I mean, we're talking 2 million viewers. Some of these esports are just massive, like a mobile game. League of Legends, of course, massive. Valorant itself, huge. Okay, PUBG Mobile apparently is even bigger than PUBG. Dota 2, huge. If we're talking in those, if the sense of tiers is like the 300,000 versus the 2 million, I don't really see how you can make an argument that it's a tier 1 esport. That's just if you're going by viewership. Like if you're going by the quality of the esport, I would argue that Rocket League was a tier 1 esport the moment it became an esport. But that's because I love the game. So it's like, I think the question, is Rocket League a tier 1 esport, is really stupid. I think it's a stupid debate. So the reason I'm making this video is not to argue whether or not Rocket League is a tier 1 esport or not, or if it's a tier 2. My argument is that it doesn't matter at all. Like, the point is, I got into Rocket League esports around season 3, and I distinctly remember the first stream I watched. I was not into any of the esports teams. I had no idea what was going on. I was just a fan of the game. I had like a few hundred hours, and I pulled up season 3, and it was Turbo Pulso was subbing on Northern Gaming. You had Denial. It was like Lethamir. There were some OCE teams. So what really drew me in, though, about that broadcast was how it changed my expectations for what an esport could be. As someone who had never watched esports, because that was for nerds, or like, why I watched real sports, you know, I couldn't imagine a world where watching like competitive gaming would be that interesting. I thought it would be complicated, kind of boring. Like there wouldn't be much to draw me in. I wouldn't care who the players were. But when I watched that first broadcast, it actually changed everything because I was immediately hooked because it reminded me of real sports. It was what I already knew, like their broadcast style with the interviews and the pregame cinematics and even just the shots. It was very simple. It was just shots of the pro teams walking around LA. That was kind of their pregame cinematics, which is funny to think now where they have like fucking 3D cameras with like huge octanes that have the decals in the back and like the hype chamber. Like they have all this stuff now. But the main thing was they had a presentation. They had ways to bring in fans, and I was enamored. I immediately loved it. You know, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. So it wasn't even really the games, it was everything surrounding the games. It was the storylines that really got me into it. To me, if the product is really good, does it matter that like how many people it appeals to? It's just kind of annoying that we're still having this exact same conversation. As someone who's been in the scene for 6-7 years, it's annoying in a way to have that we're having the same conversation now. Is Rocket League a tier 1 esport? And then, no, but it has potential. And they've been saying this for like 5 or 6 years. It has potential, Everyone knows, oh, it's so simple. Everyone can watch. I've heard this, like you guys have probably heard this argument a million times. Like everyone parrots the same thing. It's really easy to follow. It's not like League of Legends where it's really complicated. Like anyone can watch it. It's soccer or football. Everyone understands that in the world pretty much. You know, it has all the ingredients to be this mega huge esport, to be the best esport. Like it has the potential to be the most popular esport ever. But people have been saying that for like 5 years and it's still not. That in my head was something that was just like, why are we still having this conversation? Clearly maybe it will never be like CSGO or Valorant or League of Legends. The point is, even 6 years later, I think we're seeing incredible evidence of growth finally, where we were talking about this growth for years and years, but it never really came to fruition, or it came about slower than we expected. But the truth is, these things do take time. It does take time to grow the fan base, to gather interest. Rocket League, as simple as it is to understand, it does still have some barriers. Like there's still people that play the game and then put it down and get bored of it or never play again. You know, it's not the perfect game. There are issues with it. Like you don't just change an industry overnight. You know, the shooter is the video game to people still. The shooter or like the top-down thing. Those games have been around for like decades really. So the fact that Rocket League is only 6 years old and it's a completely different type of game, it doesn't fit any of those molds, means it has to create a completely new space in everyone's mind, and that takes time. Like that really does take time. So before, I thought my sort of thought on what tier Rocket League is I just didn't really care, because I was like, well, it's great. I don't know if it'll grow more, but I don't really care because the product's really good. At the same time, I do want to see the incredible growth and stuff. I just think it's a little silly to like, what are even what are the parameters of what tier it is? If it's just viewership, then the answer is a straight up no. It's still down in here. But I don't think you should. I don't think that conversation really matters. I think what matters more is the raw growth of the league, and then it will be a tier 1 esport. Going back to what does make it so good, and I think what did make this world better than any worlds we've seen in any other land we've seen in any other season we've seen in Rocket League is the storylines we saw. But really, it's just having a consistent product for so many years where these storylines will eventually flush out. Like that's how we get Zen and Carmine Corp and this NA versus EU thing that's existed forever and is getting annoying. You know, all those dynamics are actually what make it really interesting to watch. So at Worlds, you had Carmine Corp with their huge fan base show up, massive flags, like really loud cheers, and just I wish I could convey sort of what it was like to be in that building, but I mean, it was like a real sporting event with how passionate those fans were. And the craziest thing about it, the reason it stands out so much, is in our small esport community, the way fans consume the game is they're kind of just fans of the players in general. But this was totally different, because this group of people, yeah, they're fans of Atira, but they're really cheering for Carmine Corp. They don't really care about the other players and teams. And that turns off some of the community members, because they don't like the idea that, you know, well, in Rocket League, we cheer for everyone. Like there's this sort of like small, tight-knit idea that still persists. And I think eventually that's kind of something you have to let go of as the scene grows. I mean, that's what sports become. You become a fan of your organization. You become a fan of the team. And so I think that's what we're seeing with these content creator orgs. Especially I'm seeing it now. Like what I'm trying to cultivate for Rule 1 is people who are fans of Rule 1. You know, I would love to keep our team forever, but something may happen. The players may fall off, or hopefully they just keep getting better and better. But eventually we could make a roster change. I don't want people to be fans of just Rawas. If we lose Rawas, then we lose our fans. Like that's, as an org, I don't want that. I want people to be fans of the org. So it's kind of this it's a little bit of a psychology shift, which I think is interesting. I think it comes with the esport growing. So, it's not like you have to have team allegiance to make the league interesting, but I think those allegiances and those storylines to specific teams is what made it feel different, at least for me, watching these worlds, made it feel more exciting and made it feel bigger. It made all the previous lands kind of feel kind of tiny. And part of that was really intentional. Like the esports team did a really good job of making worlds feel really important. Part of that comes back to the production value and all the work they've done in the league. I think Rocket League Esports is in a really great spot. It was really amazing watching Zen dominate, honestly. Like, it sucked watching him beat my team, of course, but have we ever really had a clear number one, a clear best player in the world? I don't know that we had. Like, even when Squishy was dominating, like he seemed to be the best in North America, but you always had a counter argument. You always said, well, K-Dop is winning everything. Turbo has 4 world championships. You had all that, but now it's like there's really not really another argument other than Zen being the best. But I think those things show how exciting Rocket League will continue to be in the future, because those storylines will keep coming as long as the league just keeps growing and keeps improving. I think it'll keep going. There are rumors that we're gonna be in for a long off season after this Worlds. There's gonna be an announcement, obviously detailing what the next season will be comprised of, because we have no idea right now. But there are rumors that there'll be fewer majors this year. Personally, I actually think that's a really good thing. I think they were actually too many of the same type of events where it kind of became convoluted. It took away a lot of the hype of some of those events. In a way, I think a little bit of scarcity will actually make the scene better. For me, I started watching less of RLCS because of that. It was harder for me to follow the storylines. I didn't really care as much anymore. Obviously, having my own team made me become reinvested in it, and then now I'm sucked in again, and now we have some incredible storylines to follow, so it's not a problem anymore. Overall, for the product of Rocket League Esports, I think it's a good thing. I'm excited for it. But RLCS needs to stay special. It needs to stay hype, because what we saw at Worlds was, it was indescribable. It was to be there was very special. It's a very special feeling, very hype. I want that to always exist, and I want it to grow, and I think it will. I'm really happy. So, is Rocket League a tier 1 esport? No, but it doesn't matter, A, and B, it probably will be one day. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my perspective. If you have a different perspective or you agree with what I said, go ahead and leave a comment. Make sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys later on more Sunless. Bye!